honestly, we were all looking. What did she just say?
Right?
Yeah, like we rewinded. What did she just say? It was that type of a moment on TV.
I did not expect to hear what we were about to hear, and not from one, but pretty much all of them. And it was soul filling.
You can talk about God. A lot of people talk about God, but he spoke about Jesus Christ and the only way to salvation.
I'm telling you, everybody was shocked. It was nothing but a tear, filled room of people praying for her, praying with her, uh, in their own ways, trying to absorb the situation.
We were not ready for what happened that day.
It was one of the most inspirational, non-church going people in professing Jesus Christ out there for the masses that I've ever heard. And nobody really expected the type of revival or the type of day that it was going to end up being.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Bohr. I'm the host of Make Your Life Count podcast, produced by Charlie Kirk. It's my pleasure to join you again for this episode of Make Your Life Count again. This episode, we'd like to kind of focus on something that's very dear to my heart and our heart as Charlie Kirk, and perhaps to the hearts of many of you, since it kind of recently happened, and I think you'd have to be living under a rock to not know about this. And this person that we want to talk about sort of, I believe, embodies the the title of this podcast, the theme of this podcast, which is Make Your Life Count. So, as a reminder to everybody, Make Your Life Count is the motto for Charity Cup Ministries, and what that means to us, and what we want it to mean to other people as well, is we believe that there's two ways you can make your life count: by investing in two things that last forever, God and people. And by people, we mean people's souls. So we want to invest in people and in things that are eternal, which is God. So we believe to make your life count the most, you should invest in those two things. And that's this podcast is about featuring those people that are investing their lives in those two things. Now, I just want to remind the audience, we sometimes have, the typical person that would normally be on here would be maybe a pastor in your mind, or maybe a missionary. Well, we believe that anybody can make their life count if they have that perspective. And he could be an engineer. He could be, I don't know, it could be an architect. It could be, I don't know, an actor potentially. Maybe an activist like this gentleman we're going to talk about today. But as long as you live with that eternal perspective, so that's what Charity Cup is about, and we want to encourage that in people. So that's what this podcast is about. So, without any further ado, I want to welcome my friend Dave Miszti, who is not only a dear friend of mine, but he's also has been a part of Charity Cup and the Charity Cup ministry overall for many, many years, and he's currently also on the board of directors, has been for many years. And so it also so happened that this week he went to Charlie Kirk's memorial, and we wanted to focus this week on sort of Charlie's life, because we believe it really embodies this Make Your Life Count theme. So David happened to have gone to the memorial, so we want to kind of join the discussion together and discuss kind of what happened there, and just really talk about Charlie. So, David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very awesome, David. So, just a quick background for people. If we want to do a separate podcast with David, where I want to talk and dive deep a little bit into the ministries that he's involved in, how he's making his life count. And trust me, there's a long discussion there. But we want to focus on Charlie today. So just a short synopsis of kind of where you're from and where you're at now.
Thank you. So currently, my wife and I, we live in California. We have two kids, and we're serving in our local church here in Yorba Linda at Agape Church. I've been in the ministry with Charity Cup since 2004. I've had the honor of being able to run and co-host the Village Projects a couple of years in a row, and then subsequently I was able to attend in different capacities for the next 4 and 5 years, including some of the winter uh, uh, ministries that we had there. And since then, I kept on being involved in whatever way possible. And most recently, for about the last 6 or 7 years, I've been on the board of Charity Cup and doing whatever we can to spread that gospel.
More than that, I mean, I would add to that. Every time we were down in LA for many, many years, um, David was always a gracious host to host us over because I believe that's part of it. You know, if you want to build a team, and I think this is kind of ties into the discussion, Dave, because one of the things that really sort of, so I obviously listen to Charlie's podcasts and some of his videos that you see online, but what happened to him recently, which we'll dive into, um, kind of got me to look at more of the broader prospect and his other videos, and I realized I identify with that in some cases. In some of his podcasts, he's just sitting around, I feel like, with his buddies. And to me, that really reminded me of Charity Cup because many, many times just sitting around and laughing and having a great time and fellowshipping. Well, sometimes that has to happen in somebody's house. So, and it happened many times in yours. So, I just want to let you know that like the two like really connected. So anyway, just kind of getting into that. I wanted to let you know that I was telling my wife I would love to go to the memorial. We weren't able to. We had some guests as well as I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So, but I happened to find out that you went, which I'm not surprised, because I think you quickly you can quickly understand. Like I feel the gravity of a moment, and that's how I felt. So, how, okay, maybe you can give us a quick synopsis of how you ended up going, or what was the story to that?
Yeah, so as soon as it happened, and we knew that the tragedy ended with him dying, I turned to my wife immediately. I said, you know what? Whenever they have that memorial, I would expect that it'll be in his hometown of Phoenix. We should go. And she immediately said, yes, you're right. As it happened, she wasn't able to attend because we have younger children, and it would have been a little bit tougher. But I did go with a couple of other people, including my brother-in-law. We knew right away that it was going to be a special moment and a special time, and it was just something that we just could not pass up on going. So we decided to can go as a trip overnight. We left Southern California a little after midnight and got there at 5:30 in the morning. And I got to tell you, getting in line at 5:30 in the morning, we thought we were going to be one of the first early ones there.
Really?
You know, certainly at least just people starting to arrive, only to find out that there were at least 15, if not 20,000 people in line by the time we got there at 5:30 in the morning.
And the doors would open at 10 or?
The day before they had said that the doors would open at a later time, and then they kept on realizing as they knew that there were going to be so many people coming, they kept on uh, telling us that they were going to open the doors earlier and earlier. So they had put up barricade gates all the way around the stadium, and they had 3 or 4 different gates that you can get through. So people were lining up around those, and they had said that those gates were going to open up at 6. They opened up shortly afterwards. And it was a somewhat of an organized chaos, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing to see how many people were willing to put aside everything else that they had on going on in their lives and to be there. And even in the parking lot, while we were parking our car, you're looking around at the cars and you're seeing license plates from Florida, from Texas, Oklahoma, from Missouri, certainly from California and other surrounding states. And you just got the feel of this gravity of what it meant to people that they were willing to drop everything that they're doing, drive out there and be a part of this event.
Yeah, we were watching at home and we had goosebumps, just understanding and then seeing the people in the place. Before we dive into the event itself, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a backdrop story to Charlie and who he was, because I think the audience will have is not just from the U.S., but I believe from Europe, which and some from Moldova, kind of places we minister, and some may know something about Charlie, especially now, but I don't know if they know some of the details. So maybe you can dive just a kind of a preview of what Charlie did and what he meant to us and why he became this, I guess, phenomenon in the end. I guess I'll kind of mention this first, but I started watching him honestly years ago when he was just a young kid, and honestly, I think it was during the Obama years, and I remember I somewhat had some despair in my mind that where the young people are going. And I said, who in the world is going to reach these high schoolers that are becoming very woke and, you know, kind of going off the deep end in some ways? And as I'm looking around, here pops Charlie back in the day, you know, just as a kid. I felt like he was a kid.
Right.
And I'm hearing him talk. I'm like, this is the guy? This is the guy that's going to reach them? And as I listened to him more and more, I realized he was very adequate. I mean, he was on Fox News at, I don't know, 19, 20 years old. So that was
That's
my
right.
first encounter. And then, of course, after that, he became way more known. And I got to know that he's much stronger than I thought, you know. And man, what a vessel did God choose. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Or how did you come across him?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It was in those pivotal Obama years where most of America would have written off not only high school, but certainly college, university age students as they are just liberal. Very few of them would be anything but liberal. Maybe they'll change as they continue to grow, but for the moment, they're all liberal. And when he came on the scene and he started to go through and nationwide to the campuses, and we started to see what was actually happening, that the truth is not all those kids were liberal. Actually, a larger percentage than most people would want to even believe were quite conservative. They were passionate for the Lord, and they were ready to make a difference in their community there. And it was just amazing to see, like you said, on the nationwide newscasts where he was being invited on and he was being interviewed, and people were taking him seriously. People were actually looking to actually network with him and to help him in his cause to bring the gospel and bring the messages to the universities. He kept on growing both in numbers and the amount of locations where he was going. And most recently, we found out that basically on any given year for the last 4 or 5 years, he was gone about 300 days of the year just traveling around the country.
That's absolutely crazy and amazing at the same time. So, for those of you that may not be completely familiar with him, I think people tend to view him, and maybe even I did in some ways, as a political conservative guy, right? But as I began to watch more and more of his videos, I realized he was way more than that. And not only that, but he was really not about that. As I began to understand that at every, pretty much at every talk that he made, he brought in his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and he was not ashamed to do it.
Right.
I mean, he was preaching the gospel at every corner and to young people in a very hostile situation. So, just as a backdrop, for the folks out there, as we mentioned, a lot of our colleges and universities and even high schools are sort of becoming very liberal, at least we thought. And Charlie had this passion of reaching the young people, and we thought it was just to bring him into the conservative movement. But I realized later that it was way more than that. He tried to reach them with the gospel. Somebody, maybe a lot of us would have wrote off. And I heard a lot of commentaries lately saying they were like kind of laughing, like, "Are you kidding me? You're going in the lion's den? Like they're gonna sacrifice, they're gonna, you know, eat you alive." But the truth is, you know, as we're finding out now, he not only was able to minister to the people and I don't know, like turn the tables on them, and you know, a lot of people really got impacted, and he had an army of people. So, any other thoughts regarding?
It was just amazing to see that this idea that you can actually reach these young people had been written off for decades. America, the pastors, the local activists, the Christian activists, I should say, had basically said, well, no, we can't reach them. They're already out of the church. They're no longer coming to Sunday school. They're no longer part of the program. And hopefully they come back to the Lord. And certainly hope they come back to the conservative side later on in their years. Many would say after they start paying taxes. But the truth is, he had a calling from the beginning. He knew that that was his calling, and he was not going to give up on it. And he fought tooth and nail with everything that he had, with really, no money, no contacts,
Yeah.
and he made it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, now I listened to some of the historical, like videos about kind of how he started out, and you could say the rest is history. What I wanted to also mention, like I said, I think a lot of people think from the outside that he was just pushing sort of like American values, or I don't know how people kind of see him from Europe. And I want to mention that because we're probably going to have some Europeans watching this. It was so much more than that. Um, Another thing that I really admired about him, he was able to not only speak the gospel boldly, like without any shame, but he would confront things that I would say are very uncomfortable, like talking about gay things that I wouldn't address, or transgender, like face to face. And this was kind of his approach, was like, I feel like Apostle Paul, right? Going into the major arenas and just debating people about their faith. And Charlie, I think he took the model from there. He would set up this tent in the middle of the campus, and he would just talk to people, debate. And I felt many times kind of in a loving way, because he could probably wipe the floor with them, but I think he was very kind. And um, that was another thing that really stood out to me. And like I said, a lot of times they would end up with telling him, hey, start a family, um, you know, get to know Christ, and witness to them. So
Yes.
I didn't realize how much he reached people in that way. I thought it was just a lot more like conservative values, But I realized, man, this guy at every corner he was telling them about the gospel, which obviously that's what Charity Cup is about. We value that at the end of the day, and we value conservative values 100%, and we think it was really bold of him, but we value when people hear the gospel, we feel that changes lives, and that's what he did very boldly and loudly.
And
Um, any other sort of memories they had sort of him throughout this sort of time until now, before we got to the memorial?
well, first of all, I want to say that it was interesting to see that he had accomplished so much in those years, because I think most of us that were watching him on a regular basis, I had him on my YouTube as a channel, and notifications, and getting his latest videos. You just took it for granted that he's been doing it for so long, and that he was there. And you're absolutely right. He had this humbleness about him,
Yeah,
to where he said things in love. He
yeah,
was stern, he was honest, but he
yeah,
said it in love because he meant it that way. It wasn't a show that he was putting on, to where he was doing one thing on camera and acting differently in real life with the people around him and so forth. That's who he was.
yeah,
And when he spoke about the truths of the gospel, when he spoke about the truths of what our government should or shouldn't be, and how it should act and what it should be doing for us, he meant those things. And that was the beauty of what I got out of it years ago, started to watching him, that it was just amazing. And it will be tough shoes to fill.
exactly. David, you mentioned we took him for granted. Honestly, that's how I felt, because I was watching him. And here's an interesting story, and I was going to ask you this too. You know, when 9/11 happened, I remember where I was, and I
Mhm.
remember what I did. And I had a similar situation here on, ironically, on 9/10, right? The day before 9/11. I was actually flying somewhere, and on my phone I was looking at a video of Charlie
Oh,
debating somebody. I think it was some transgender person. And again, very nice, cordial, very awesome points, and so on. Anyway, I shut off my phone because I had to get on a plane. And I remember I was on the plane. I was even thinking about it, like, wow, that was so nice of him to explain and be so graceful with this person who was kind of a lot more, let's say, animosity towards him, like condescending sort of. Anyway, I open my phone and I'm seeing some messages from my family just flying, some about Charlie. And then I started looking on Twitter or X, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no way, he got shot.
Hmm.
As I was walking off that plane, I promise you, I felt like my best friend had just got shot. Like everything, like it was in slow motion. I was running into things. I couldn't believe it. It was surreal, just like 9/11 in some ways. And like you said, I felt like, oh my gosh, my friend that
Yes.
like you said, I kind of took it for granted because his video just show up. He's got so much life ahead of him. Exactly, that's the feeling I had, and I'm like, anyway, where were you, or what was your experience?
I was here in the office, and all of a sudden one of my employees says, "Did you hear that Charlie Kirk got shot?" And we immediately turned it on. We probably had about four different stations going on, reporting on it, and they were showing some of the footage happening from live, and also the recap of what had happened. And it was all of a sudden the only thing that I could kind of relate it to would be a numbness. Much like what you were saying about bumping into things at the airport and whatnot, we all went numb, hearing it and not knowing what could be happening, but certainly seeing the footage of how badly he was shot and what had happened there. We were all fearing the worst, but praying that God would do his miracle. Um, it will be something that will definitely, for those that heard about it on the day and experienced it, it'll last with us forever.
Um, Absolutely, and just that image, it'll be hard to clear out of somebody's mind for a long time. But I
Yes.
remember I was praying. I said, "No, God's gonna get him through this because he's doing amazing things for him." But sometimes God has other plans, and that's another discussion for another day,
Yes.
apologetics. But yeah, it was a very sad day, honestly. Like I felt, like you said, I kind of took it for granted that he was just there. Yeah, and that's how I felt. And another thing that was interesting is I didn't understand his reach until I began to see people messaging from other countries. I'm like, how do you know Charlie? I was on my Facebook and in Romania. I was talking. Well, there was, some who didn't understand everybody. But how do you even know Charlie? And I realized
Mhm.
his reach was so much more than just the U.S.
Yes.
And I obviously now we understand more that it was way bigger than we ever thought. So all right, so um, let's kind of move forward, kind of towards that day because I think that day, honestly, I felt at least I don't know if there was a better way to culminate what happened on his life, his legacy, than what happened on that day. At least from my point of view, and that's why I was curious when you were there how you felt. But we were just we kind of stayed home that day from church to watch the memorial. We were all gathered. I had a few friends over, and I thought, okay, it's gonna be probably some people, just some sermons. Who knows? Just some videos. We were not ready for what happened that day. I'll just leave it at that. So you happened to experience it in person. So let's hear about that. So I guess what was your first impression, kind of when you walked in? You made it in the stadium, right? I assume.
We did. We did. So we stood in line for about 2.5 hours. Got in at 8 o'clock in the morning to be able to find some seats. Everybody was rushing every which way that you can think of to try to find some seats, and we made it to the second level to where we were directly across from the stage itself. Really a good view of what was going on. Um, so there was a sense of joyful mourning, if you could somehow explain that or put it into words. It's the idea of people have now gone beyond that shock. 11 days have gone by now. We've all accepted remorsefully, undoubtedly, that he has died. and we were all there to celebrate him, to mourn with everybody that was there, and to mourn with the family, but also to really, really just rejoice in what is going to come out of it. And nobody really expected the type of revival or the type of day that it was going to end up being. It was just fabulous. I kudos and congratulations to the team that put on the entire event. They did wonderful. To have basically 3 hours of nonstop worship, better than any concert that you can go to, with Phil Wickham, with Brandon Lake, with everybody that was there. It was nonstop pure worship from 8 o'clock in the morning until just short of 11 o'clock when the actual program started. Um, the room was filled with people just on their feet, or sitting there praying and singing along and worshiping, and just knowing that there was something special that was going to come out of that program.
David, I also
Um,
wanted to mention. So the reason I felt like this was a culmination of things, because honestly, things are already flying all over the internet, like videos. People are like consuming his, from what I read, and they're already consuming all his content like never before. Like
right.
his profile on Instagram went from 1.7 million, I believe now it's at 10 million, and
Mm,
up even to the memorials, it went up to like 7 or 8 million, including his wife's went from like a few 100,000 to 6 million or something. So people are just really hungry to consume his
yes.
material and like kind of see what they missed, I feel. And then that day happened. I mean, I felt like this crescendo that happened. So anyway, so you're saying basically when you walk in, it was already worship was going on,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
not well-known people.
So there was a mixture of people there, I could tell you that. Like I said, they came from all places. Many people, you can tell by the way that they were dressed, the mannerism, everything about them. They had skipped church to be there. They were dressed in their suit and tie. They were dressed, appropriately for the event itself, and they were there to honor him, but also to worship God through all of it. And it was a beautiful testimony to see all of that. There were some people there that I'm sure that they were only there because of the fact that they aligned themselves with his political views, or the fact that he helped so much throughout the 2024 campaign, and that he is credited with a lot of the things that ended up in the vote for Donald Trump. So some people were there for that, but I would say that the majority of the people there were there to honor him for what he had done through his ministry.
So besides, you're saying besides really Christians, you think there were a lot of non-Christians. They just liked his views, and maybe they were not believers. Would
Yes.
you have a sense of, from what you saw, I don't know, 2-1 or 50-50? What do you think? Was mostly Christians?
I would say the majority of them were Christians, but I can tell you that there were several different pivotal moments throughout the 5 hour ceremony that we were there, besides the 3 hours of worship. So we were literally in our seats or in there for 8 hours, which is, if you're in the Romanian community, that's longer than any church convention that we've ever gone to.
That's right. They,
But the pivotal moment, it actually started off at the beginning when his pastor came out, and he had a mini eulogy for Charlie, but also he preached the gospel, no holds barred, preached the gospel, and it was just amazing. And at the end of it, he did not waste his opportunity to be able to call people to Christ.
I was gonna ask you uh, one more thing. Honestly, I feel like that guy like really set the tone, because, like I said, going into it, I'm like, it's gonna be pictures. And then this guy gets up there and he says these beautiful things, and then at the end he has a calling. Like, I'm telling you, the whole room stopped. It blew us away. So, what was your?
So picture that every section probably had about 300 people in any given section of the room, as you would see those panoramic views of the stadium itself. In any given section of about 300 people, you had about a dozen people profess uh, that they stood up, that they're the first time listening to you're hearing the gospel and accepting Jesus as their Lord and Savior.
So for those of you that maybe didn't see it, we'll try to see if we can have some images up on here. But the pastor stood up, and at the end of the speech, he basically had a calling for anybody that wants to profess Christ, right
Yes.
there and then. And that's what David's saying. So in your estimate, out of, I think it was the arena held
63,000.
63,000. Were there people outside, I understand?
Yes, so in total, there was a full 63,000, although there were mixed seats here and there that were empty, but you had maybe 400 or 500 on the floor there. So give or take 90 to 95,000 were actually present based upon us being there and seeing how many were there. And of that, I would say anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 raised their hands and stood up professing Christ.
And that's obviously not counting the people that you couldn't see in the stadium. It was broadcasted on
Correct.
pretty much every station. That day, just so if you guys don't know, if you went onto YouTube, it was dominating YouTube as far as live events. It was this, whether it's Fox News, NBC, whatever. It was broadcast broadly, which is another interesting factor, Anyway, okay, so the gentleman spoke. Then I believe after that, I guess we can kind of go through each one, but let me ask you, what was like the next impacting moment in your view?
The consistency of the speakers getting up there, including starting with Rebecca Dunn, who they were philanthropists that even though he was 18, maybe he was 19 years old when he had met with Rebecca and her husband, her late husband, and they believed in him. They saw something in him as an 18, 19-year-old that they may not have seen in other people that had been trying to start ministries and do things for decades. And they were willing to put their money where their mouth is and where their faith was to help him to start what he ended up doing in Florida and then certainly around the country. But that continued as people got up there and they talked about his consistency, the fact that he said what he was going to do and he did what he said he was going to do, and it was just amazing to see that continue to grow and to progress and so forth, all the way up to what we knew, these days, where he was much more of a political figure, also not just a college evangelist, if you will.
Rebecca, I remember I think she said that story that he was trying to raise $50,000, right? And she said, "We'll give you half if you can come up with the other half." I think she implied that, she's thinking, "Oh, we'll see you in a few weeks, maybe a few months,
Right.
if you can get
Or
that,
maybe never.
or maybe never if you can get that." And then I
Yeah.
guess Charlie called him the next day and said, "Hey, I have the money. We're ready for that check." And
Right.
it sounded like from there on, I mean, this was consistent. He kind of kept his word, and he did what he said he was going to do. So that was definitely remarkable hearing that outside story. What else? What was your other, like, the next moment that you thought was very impacting?
So the next, so there were so many of them, just because of the fact that there wasn't a single person that got up there that not only did they not speak so highly of him and had personal experiences with him, but continued to elevate him, showing that he had his faith was super strong, but that he was always willing to share his faith, his examples of his walk with Christ, and constantly that ability to profess that to them was just consistent throughout all of the different speakers that came up there, and it was just amazing that you can have people of such high level, whether they were in the church setting whether they were in some sort of ministry or whether they were in the government now, that spoke so highly of him. It was a testimony to our faith and what we do in the ministries, that if you do things consistently with honor and for the right reasons, people will notice, they will take action with you, they will support you, and they will help you in your cause. Many times I think that in our ministries and in the Christian ministries, we think, well, we need to kind of be a little bit timid or maybe just behind the scenes or whatnot, and not really focusing too much, to be a loud lion out there. Charlie took it the other way. From the moment he set foot in that quote unquote limelight, he went gun ho the whole entire way.
I remember he had a video on Fox News when he was still probably 18, and he goes, we're not just a flash in the pan."
Mm,
And that was funny. I'm sure the reporter's like, "Yeah, sure," because
right.
he was a kid, and
Exactly.
nobody's saying that anymore. David, I wanted to ask you, so as some of the speeches were going on, and I do want to dive in and maybe discuss some of the speakers, because
Sure.
it was definitely different than the other many memorials. But like, what was like your neighbors? Like, what were you thought? I mean, um, because I remember maybe when other incidents like this happened, there was a lot of demonstrations, burning down stuff. I mean, how did people? They seem to do the opposite in this instance. Like people were like became more lovely towards each other. At least that's my sentiment. What was the sentiment there? Were they angry, right? Because you could say, "I'm angry, like this. Why did they take this guy away?"
Are you referring to at the memorial
At the
itself?
memorial, yeah, at the place.
I would say that due to the fact that a large percentage of those people were from a Christian background, they had at this point, 11 days later, accepted it as this is what God willed for Charlie at this point, and it was going to be used for the greater good. And there was a lot of love there. It was the same way that we were seeing it around the country, where the vigils were continuing to go on and all of the different things that were going on. People were just showing love to each other, kindness, moving around to accommodate people, to have more seats available. And just everybody had their own, mini version of how they had been affected or why it is that they had taken the time out of their busy schedule to be there to honor Charlie. And it was just a beautiful thing.
I went to a vigil here in Detroit, and that was the sentiment I had. Everybody was so nice and kind to each other. There were some protesters there, by the way. Everybody was like very nice to them. They were like in the middle of the crowd with their signs, and everybody treated them very respectful. And that was the sentiment. I had my kid with me. Everybody was so nice to pick him up. Then my kid was making some noise, and he's like, "Don't worry about it." Just very graceful. And I feel like maybe that was the sentiment. I understand there was some protesters outside of the arena, or
They were kept at bay, so it really did not become an issue. Maybe it did after we had left. We had left immediately after the ceremony was over, so we were among the first group of people that were leaving, and they were out there, but they were not creating any sort of a problem at the time.
okay. All right, so now we're in the arena still, moving forward. There's obviously, I believe they kind of had the staff, like, or people that were part of his ministry speak first, they felt like, and
Yes.
then eventually progressed towards more like government officials. Who sort of stood out to you majorly or made an impact on you from sort of the first section of the speakers?
Yeah, his chief of staff, Mickey, really stood out because something that we found out, I didn't know about this because watching his videos, throughout the years, this isn't something that's necessarily clear, but it was made clear to us while we were there. Um, Charlie had an ability to pick people to be able to work with and around him. And one of the people younger than him a little bit was Mickey, his chief of
I-
staff.
Is that the one that was up there with his wife?
That's
And he
correct,
mentioned,
yes.
okay, all right.
Yeah. And Charlie had said many times in different interviews that he would not have been able to do what he had been doing for the last few years without Mickey's support and the abilities that he had to be able to set up this the whole events and so forth, and to be able to communicate with everybody that was involved. He was up there, and just the testimony that Mickey had about the love and the kindness that Charlie showed to him, the fact that he helped him even in setting him up, with his now wife and so forth, and the advice that he had received throughout the years, that was super impactful. And it was just amazing to see that there are people out there that are in ministry or high end positions, and yet they're not as humble as Charlie was. And yet Charlie showed on a day to day basis that he was the simple Charlie that we thought that he was, and it was gracious to see.
I mean, honestly, that was the sentiment I had. I felt like everybody from his staff that went up almost felt like, definitely like it was a friend
Yes.
besides the boss. And everybody kind of said this in many ways. He was not like my boss. He was my friend. He was my mentor. But speaking of that gentleman, like that's like discipleship 101. I felt
Yes.
when he said, and he admitted, like he took me under his wing, and this guy had some fire in his belly. Seems like he was not gonna just leave things alone. I think he said he was gonna become, he's gonna get involved even more.
Right.
Do you know his wife? Because I think his wife, he mentioned she was from a Balkan country. Do you know by any chance where she was from?
I don't. I meant to actually research that because that caught my attention as well, but I did not.
Yeah, they mentioned something about I don't know, they were dealing with some human trafficking or something, and she was involved in that ministry, and so I was curious, she possibly Romanian or anyway. But yeah, very cool. Anybody else that stood out sort of from the staff?
So the whole staff as a whole, to me, stood out with this aspect. Charlie treated them all the same. He kept them informed. He did the business of the ministry on a day to day basis, but he made them feel as if they were just one family. There wasn't necessarily a hierarchy that you're on the lower ranks, or you're a newbie, or you're, not as important in our ministry of getting everything done that other people are doing. He really treated everybody the same, and the testimony of people talking about that, and remembering that, and probably relating to other jobs that they may have had to where they weren't necessarily treated that way, was just inspirational to me.
And I remember there was some video that was playing at one point, and it mostly kind of featured the work of Turning Point, and it had, I believe, Erika or a narrator, and basically it actually had Charlie's words, and it sounded like it was almost recording in a meeting with his staff, and then showing images. I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
basically he was saying, "Hey, what you're doing here is not just a job. This is a calling. It's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than all of us." And so we have a job to do. We're here to save America and
Right.
basically bring people to Christ. It's much bigger. Um, so it wasn't like, hey, you just got to do your little pigeon hill job, and that's all you got to
Right.
do. Like it was much bigger than that. It really reminded me of Charity Cup, honestly. And I'm not trying to say we're at that level or anything like that, but the idea of brotherhood,
Yes.
Charity Cup in a way is way more than just the work that we do on the ground. It's really this brotherhood that's created, and people that you become more than friends, and brothers and sisters that you anywhere you meet. So I kind of identified with that sentiment, like you said, that it was
Right.
portrayed. Another thing that I wanted to mention regarding the staff. So I really started to watch Charlie, or I got a little bit of glimpse on it of maybe what he was like, and one of the reasons why I thought he was very down to earth is because I watched him during the election. They had like a podcast with him and his producer, the guy, I believe his name is Andrew, the other guy Tyler, and some other guy, and they were basically breaking down the results as they were coming in. I don't know if you watched.
I don't recall. No.
Yeah. So a lot of people were watching Fox or whatever, but I watched their show. It was live,
Okay.
but they were so granular in the results. when you were watching, you felt like it wasn't like super like fancy. They're like talking to each other. Hey, can you get me a drink? It was very down to earth. Only later I realized he was getting like 7 million views. It was not a small podcast or whatever or show, but they were just there's camaraderie, and he was very down to earth. He was just part of the team. He cried just like they were like bummed when a certain county didn't turn. So to me, they were very knowledgeable, but that's beside the point. But the point is, they're giving a lot of insider information as things were happening. And they're explaining basically, here's what we're doing. We're downloading this data. We're going to look. Hey, it's not looking good for him, or it is. My point is, it was very down to earth. And I don't know, I saw like a little glimpse into his like team. And I don't know, for me, that was very inspiring. And then I saw him now, these guys on the stage, obviously kind of mourning. But I remember that like I said, that show. So um, again, very down to earth and like a deep team environment, and I thought that
Yes.
was really cool. So I'm not surprised these guys were obviously pretty bummed and mourning them, but it seemed like they came together pretty fast and they didn't skip a
They did.
beat. So
They did.
um, okay, so kind of moving on, I guess. So it seemed to me like they progressed towards like um, kind of bringing in some of the politicians, right? Which again, I'm like, okay, so here we go. Now we're gonna just talk about policies or praise conservatism. What were your thoughts? So let me ask you first, what was your
Yes.
expectations from
So
that?
I was under the same impression as you were. I was expecting that they would keep it relatively neutral and certainly talk about the policies or the issues that led up to the assassination and how we might be able to change things. I did not expect to hear what we were about to hear, and not from one, but pretty much all of them. And it was soul filling to be able to hear from. I'll give a couple of examples of the ones that I thought that were just above and beyond where I thought this. I don't know where I'm at right now that I was so excited to hear that. So to start with, towards the end, certainly, and we'll get to talk about it. Erika's speech was not only inspirational but so heartfelt, and there was so much there. But we'll certainly get to talk about
Yeah,
that. But
yeah, yeah.
the the one that struck me the most, and all of them were great, from Pete Hegseth to Gore, to all of the different people that came up before him. But the person that really left me in awe was a person that I had been following now for 10, 15 years, Tucker Carlson.
Really.
When Tucker got up there, I had been watching and listening to his podcasts even since he's left Fox,
Yeah.
and seeing some progression in his mind shift and so forth. Um, and he had a no holds barred message, 6.5 minutes of just talking about Charlie's faith and starting there, but talking about Charlie's faith and how important it was for you and I, and him talking about the sin that he has and that he needs to be saved, and he needs to be forgiven, and he needs to come to Christ, and that it was one of the most inspirational non-church going people in professing Jesus Christ out there for the masses that I've ever heard. And that was really, really great. I know that he is looking to get involved more with Turning Point now in different ways. He's going to be one of the hosts on one of the campuses coming up this year. To be able to take Charlie's place at that particular location. So that to me was amazing. I expected that I may get something similar from J.D. Vance, being a Catholic, being a Christian. I expected something from Donald Trump, but when I heard it from other people, including from Tucker Carlson, it was really uplifting.
Uh, so I felt like, so first of all, I think you categorized it perfectly when you said that that was my expectation probably too. It was going to be more about Okay, so they're gonna just kind of talk about, hey, these lunatics,
Right.
you know, bashing, these things that they don't agree with, and basically anti-conservatives, right? But there was none of that. I mean, there was some, obviously, naturally, right? People, there was some anger of who did this potentially, but it was really more. It was way more than that, and I did not expect that, especially when it moved into that sort of political, and especially Tucker definitely, I feel like broke the mold because he came up there like, plus, especially with his laugh, and he has that laugh anyway. Very, 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 yeah. So that was. So I was gonna ask you. Um, I'll ask you in a minute, but let me ask you, what did you think of Frank Turek? Because from the outside, what was your thought? Like in that sort of first section, I felt like that was another one that I was very memorable, right? He described kind of he was with Charlie, he was in a vehicle. What was your what was the mood in the arena at that time when he spoke about that? Because it kind of really took people back to that moment, I felt.
Right. So I did not know much about Frank Turek up to that day. When I saw his name on the list, I immediately Googled him and looked him up and found out a lot of information. And then to hear the actual information that he had given us about the moments right after the assassination and what was going on and so forth. And even the lighthearted humor that he was trying to infuse into it at the same time to calm the emotions of the people in the stadium itself. Um, he was amazing. He certainly it has left and will leave a huge impact on his life because of his close connection to Charlie through
Yeah,
their faith, not only through the politics of it, but through their faith. That they believe and they were professing the same exact things, and they were on the college campuses fighting for the same thing to bring people to Christ. And then also the moments of him having to be there, to have Charlie in his arms, literally in those moments, there was something that was in one way hard to hear, but also great to know that although Charlie may not have been conscious to know who was around him, he was surrounded by people that truly, in every sense of the world, loved him.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I appreciated the fact. I think he surrounded himself with many people that were great, and I thought it was great that apparently this guy was a coach on apologetics, which it
Yes.
sort of explained how Charlie was able to talk about so many subjects with like authority
Hmm.
because he surrounded himself with great people, and I think he was one of them. There was many others. If you listen, somebody also said to replace Charlie in his persona, you would take like five different people. He was a apologetic. He was a great debater, but he knew how to read people, right? It's
Yes.
hard to do all those, and then he was able to talk about marriage. He was able to talk about the
Mhm.
gospel. It's like very hard to marry all those. But anyway, my point is that I felt like it was great to hear that he had people that were coaching him, and that explains it. So this guy was there, Frank. So I thought it was really impacting that he told a story in that way. Again, he told the gospel once again in a very, yeah. Okay, so kind of moving back to the section of the sort of the political section. What other people? I'll tell you who else stood out to me. Then maybe you can tell me, and then I have another question that I can't wait to hear. Um, I was surprised by Marco Rubio.
Mm.
Little Marco. As you and I are, watch politics. So I remember kept on popping in my head, Little Marco. He ran for president against Trump, and that was his nickname. And then now here he is. And I had since kind of followed him a little closer because people were saying that he's a really funny guy in real life. He doesn't quite come across to me that way. But anyway, what I was surprised is the gospel, the way he explained it in like 30 seconds to capture
Good.
the atonement of Christ and what he did for us. And from a government official, like, I think the other guys did too, but I just felt like he was so eloquent in explaining. I remember I was watching the video a few times. I'm like, wow, how? And you can argue, is he genuine? Is he not? That's kind of the I get that from a lot of friends. Well, it's politics, but they share the gospel live, and that seed is gonna go out, and probably God doesn't care. Even Apostle Paul says, I don't care if it's from a spirit of, how do you say it in Romanian and English? If it's from wrong motives, it doesn't matter. I care that the gospel is being preached. So what was your thought?
So the room was really absorbing it. I can tell you that the people around were pleasantly surprised to hear that type of a tone or the message that he had that he was giving us there, and we were definitely absorbing it, and I think he had an impact on the people around him, and I also think that yes, it can be politics, but you know what? In an age of people looking down on Christians, for them to put themselves on the line like
Yeah,
that and to
exactly.
profess what it is that they believed and what they know to be true and evident was amazing to me, because they were not doing themselves any favors. The people that are Christians that already support them. You're not winning any new votes.
Right.
So they weren't doing that in a sense of you're going to get some more votes or somebody supporting you. They were doing it out of the deepness of their heart and what they believed, and that was beautiful.
The other thing, Dave, my thought is to be able to say the gospel so eloquently, and even
Yes,
Pete had said, and
yes,
and quite a few others. I can't remember exactly what Tulsi said, even though some people said, "Dude, you can't just y- like you have to kind of own that information,
correct.
like
It has
especially
to
with
come from the
Marshall."
heart.
Yeah, there's no way you can just regurgitate it just to be impressed. Like, you know what I mean? So
Right,
to me, that was impressive. And like you said, they don't need to win votes. They already just won, and people are already on their side. But they went there anyway, and that's why I couldn't believe it.
right.
The highest branches of government were like preaching the gospel. Like, I don't know. To me, that to me was the greatest day and probably one of the greatest days in the history of my life so far. Besides like personal things, obviously with me getting married, kids, blah blah. Blah. But I thought it was that at that level, man. Um,
I agree, and I don't know if you caught on because they kind of went over it real quick, but I think Donald Trump had said it, but I had read it before. There were literally two entire plane loads, 737s, passenger planes that were full of nothing but staff and politicians that all came in from Washington, D.C. So you're talking anywhere between 150 to 250 people that the government paid for to bring in to be there because they wanted to be there. I mean, can you think of a non politician or a non heavy hitter
yeah,
just that has been that had a funeral that has had that type of a turnout from the people in government? I really cannot think of it.
that's what I'm saying. It was absolutely amazing, and I didn't know the plane, but honestly, I'm imagining that this guy transcended the fact that he was very obviously he was the key weapon in winning the election, right? But obviously he transcended that by far. And
Yes.
I remember this remark was made by Susie Wiles, started
Hmm.
tearing up. Now people
Yes.
don't know who Susie Wiles is, the chief of staff, I believe. And,
Correct.
and Tucker kind of caught on, right? He
Yes.
said to see Susie Wiles tearing up,
Hmm.
who's not very emotional,
Right.
he definitely
Yes.
had an impact on. So he was their friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was there on a regular basis for regular events. Charlie was at the White House, and so they had gotten to know him on a very personal basis, not just on the order of business on a daily basis. It was more on a down to earth, who you are and what you do type of a event. And it was obviously he left an impact that was uh, hard to fill.
So I think that's a very good point because there's no really brown points needed in a way here. The election was just won. Yeah, 2026 will be coming up, but There was nothing. There was no reason to bring that much staff.
No.
Trump could have gotten himself and probably would have been enough. Like, there's no need to bring Rubio, all those other people. You know what I mean? Like, there
But
was no need if you want to win political points.
beyond that, I think so. You're right. It would be one thing to call up those different department heads and say, you need to be there. But I don't think that that's what happened. I truly believe that Trump's staff was inundated with heads of state saying, I want to be there. I want to be a part of it. Make sure that I get to be there. Versus, can you please come and help us to celebrate Charlie Kirk's life?
Okay, I mean, I imagine it's so easy to excuse yourself if you didn't want to go, right? I have to fly, I don't know, to a country. I was talking to my wife, what events are the vice president and the president there at the same time? Like, at a private event. It's pretty rare.
Right.
So I totally agree with the sentiment. And Susie Wiles being there, the chief of staff, she's not even a public person in a way, right?
Right.
Sergio, the other guy, why was he there? We don't even know who he was. I only found out because of what he said. You know, I'm talking about Sergio something.
Yeah, Sergio Gore is his name. G-O-R, yes.
He was, I guess he was handling all the staff. He hires all the people.
Right.
I didn't know who he was. He's not a public person in general. I don't see him on Fox News too much. I mean, maybe you do, but so he didn't have to bring all these people. These people wanted to come, exactly. And Sergio made a point that I will miss that text from Charlie with a verse every morning. I mean, I had goosebumps when I heard that, So let me ask you this sort of grand question that I've been waiting to ask. What was the moment, and maybe this is previewing, I don't know. What was the moment that gave you the most goosebumps? Or were there a few? Was there one that really stood out the most?
So the totality of the event gave goosebumps from beginning to end. It was a situation to where you were on the edge of your seat to see, especially after, like you said, the tone was set with his pastor at the beginning, to see how the rest would go. I'm telling you, every time that music came on, that it was going to be introducing somebody else, and it was the beautiful hymnal that they were using to be able to introduce each person, and to have those pictures and sometimes video that they were using of the connections with Charlie and the person that they were introducing, and you could see the love and the affection with Charlie and those other people as they were being introduced. All of that was pivotal to every single next moment that we were. So we were on the edge of our seat, honestly, throughout the entire time. Like I said, it was a 5-hour event. It started at 11, and actually, no, 5.5 hours. It ended at 4:30 in the afternoon, Phoenix time, and most people, if they had to go use the restroom or they were in and out real quick. They did not want to miss a moment of it. And that's how we were too. To be able to sit in your seats for that 5.5 hours, that's something. The most pivotal moment certainly was when Erika came on stage. We were anticipating that she would either be the last or the second to last speaker of the evening. To have her come on stage, to come out there and to do what she had to do was such a testimony to who she is, to what the ministry has been, to what Charlie stood for, and also what the ministry most probably will continue to be. That had to be, I mean, it's hard for any spouse to address a church or a funeral home, for that matter, at the funeral of their spouse. How about addressing the entire world?
Yeah.
I could tell you that prior to that, there was all sorts of commotion in the room. People were coming and going, and babies crying, and people answering the phone and having to leave, and so forth. But as the anticipation grew, and as those images came on the screen, and we knew that it was going to be Erika, every baby was quiet. The room was silent. It was eerie silent when the music finally stopped, and the fanfare and fireworks and so forth introducing Erika finally stopped, and she started to take her first few words. It was heart-wrenching. It was something that no spouse should ever have to do in those conditions.
Yeah.
And it was just so amazing to see what it is that she actually spoke about. She spoke about the love of her husband for the family, for his ministry, especially for his God and his Savior. And it was just amazing as she continued to talk, and for her to say that she forgave the person that did this.
Do you think that was there like take us to that moment? I felt like there was a grass like como se dice, like people were taken back by that.
It's a hard thing to grasp even in the moment, and I think even when you hear it, it goes in your ears, and it takes a million miles to go from your ears to your brain to actually comprehend what she just said. You heard it, you knew what she said, and still it is awe, and just takes you to a place where, like, only because of God, only because of what Jesus Christ has forgiven us and what he's done in our lives, would you be able to have that ability to profess that you have forgiven the person that did this to your husband. I'm telling you, everybody was shocked. It was nothing but a tear, filled room of people praying for her, praying with her, in their own ways, trying to absorb the situation. And I'm sure immediately everybody, after absorbing what she said, was asking themselves, what would I have been doing in this situation? Would I have been able to forgive?
David, I saw even on TV people stood up and started clapping. And I think it was I think they probably did that a few times, but it was scattered. But I felt like this one was all at once. Like,
Right.
I guess my question was, did anybody even sit down in that moment? Because it felt like, at least from the TV standpoint,
I
everybody.
don't think so. I mean, it would have been hard not to stand. It was such a sad but rejoiceful moment to know that our faith in our Lord Jesus Christ can get you to the point to where you can forgive such a unspeakable act. It was something that as sad as we all were, we had to rejoice with it.
Absolutely. If the audience didn't see the program, if there's one thing you need to see, this is definitely the one.
Yeah.
This you definitely need to see this part of this video where the wife of Charlie stands up and unexpectedly to probably anybody, she says she will follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, that he gave himself for others and he's going to forgive the killer,
Yes.
because that's what Jesus would want and that's what Charlie would want and would do. And I like the fact that she kind of said, "Hey, I don't know, maybe it's hard for me to do it, but I know my husband wouldn't want that." You know, that blew my mind. I feel like that was the whisper heard around the world,
Yes.
because she said in that, at least on TV, it was more like a whisper. I forgive him. It was the whisper heard around the world, is what I felt like in that moment. Like we were all, honestly, we were all looking. What did she just say?
Right.
Yeah, like we rewinded. What did she just say? It was that type of a moment on TV. Uh, I remember she kept on looking up. So, and I was telling people in our room there, like, probably the being there is so much different than being and watching it on TV. With sort of the echo of the microphone and I don't know. I feel like you. It's so amazing that you went, man. I envy you in some ways, 'cause I think you're never ever probably gonna forget something like this.
So what she was when she was looking up, there was an amazing banner that had been printed. It was probably 50 feet tall. That was right near us where we were sitting. And she was referencing that. And what they did on that banner is it had him in his traditional blue suit that you see him a lot in, and I believe that was even what he wore at the RNC when he had his speech at the RNC, and then different positions or different mannerisms printed in different ways on that same one banner. So she was constantly looking at that, and as a matter of fact, Trump at one point also referenced that he was pointing up at that same banner there. That was kind of overlooking or overlaying everybody within the room there.
So David, so basically you're saying you believe that was, for you anyway, it was the most impactful moment of of
It,
of, of amazing moments, because I mean it would have been hard to top off all the other moments. Like this had to be
right.
grandiose.
It was definitely a moment that brought everything together. So there was a culmination point, and that was it, where you just felt, okay, this is really, come together. Everybody has talked about how their experiences were and how great Charlie was, and that's what you expect at a funeral. Everybody talked about their faith and how important it was and how Charlie had made an impact in some way in their lives. And again, that was amazing. But to see and hear the wife going through this grief, that will be a never ending grief, to be able to hear the words from her were the most important or impactful part of that entire program.
Uh, I tell you, the day it happened, and now that I have kids, young kids, and he has young kids, I I could not imagine what she had to go through that night to go
Right.
home when they were going to bed and they're asking for their dad.
Right.
So what she had to go through, and then so even for the kids, you could say, how could you forgive him? Look what he did to the kids, and yet she still did that. I mean, I could
That's
not imagine that ordeal. Um, and in such a, yeah, anyway, such a graphic way too. And how do you even process that? I think it was absolutely, yeah, okay. So moving on a little bit, I guess, to me, I thought Trump speaking next was a little bit anticlimactic, because I feel like Erika was the star of the show, and then he spoke, which obviously he's the president. You want to, I don't, was that your, I don't know, was that your something? I felt like it was great what he said. I kind of, I can't say I watched every word, because I felt like, oh, some of this I've already heard, blah blah blah. What was your thoughts?
So we were also questioning as the program was progressing and seeing the progression of the actual government officials speaking and kind of figuring who was going to go next. We knew when JD was going to come on, and the question was ultimately, like you had just mentioned, will it be Erica first and then President Trump, or will Erica bring the memorial service to a close? I do agree with you that President Trump, at some point, just a few minutes into his approximate 45-minute speech there, did take it political and did take it to discuss a lot of the things that we had already discussed, in so many other different events or formats that he has had in the past. He still was impactful. I think he did a good job in bringing it together, and it was important for him to be there in that manner and to tie it all together at the end of the day. I mean, it brought it to an end. People left energized. People left like, okay, there's still hope. There's a future for all of this, and we're going to be a part of it. And I got to say that one of the things that I experienced was before, so during the worship set, that first 3 hours between 8 and 11, they had the TVs on and the music on in the hallways, near the concession stands and whatnot. And there were a lot of friends from our church and other people that were attending. the memorial service also. So I was going from different sections, meeting up with people that I knew. And from time to time, I would stop and I would just talk to people or kind of listen to people. And the one thing that I was really struck with was this group of guys, some men that were already married, some men that were single still. And I'm referring to the ones that were between the 20 and the 30 age group. And you could hear them talking amongst themselves about the impact that Charlie had had on them. You could hear them talking about Charlie made the difference for me to become a believer. Charlie brought me to conservatism. Charlie brought me out of the despair of not voting at all for anybody, not believing in the system, to understanding that there is hope and that there is an ability. And I saw dozens upon dozens of young men that I could see that are truly going to be the Charlies in their communities. Whether it's going to be through Turning Point or not, I don't know. But they were energized. They were ready. You could see it in their face. You could see it in their eyes. They were ready to take that torch and to continue to move forward with it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember, just watching different videos on X or whatever, and also so many people saying that they're going to church now,
Right?
right? There are people that bought Bibles because of Charlie, because he had a saying, basically go to church,
Yep.
get involved in a church. And then I guess the Bible was just because he piqued their curiosity. I have personal testimonies of friends of mine that told me that after they saw what happened to Charlie, they wanted to speak about the gospel. They
Wow.
tried before, but they weren't that interested. But now they were ready to speak about the gospel because of his sacrifice essentially. Um, I think the other thing he preached is, hey, get married, have kids, have a family. Which now that I'm there, I understand, and I think I totally identify with him doing that. I think that is a piece of heaven in a way. So
Mm.
he impacted people in so many different ways, not the gospel, but even the family aspect. Even if you're not a
Yes.
Christian, he's saying, hey, that is a beautiful thing. You need to experience it, and I thought it was amazing. Some people touched upon that I
They
believe
did.
during the ceremony too.
Yes. They
Um,
did.
yeah. What was your thought about sort of JD Vance speaking? What was your thought?
So knowing that he comes from a Catholic faith, I expected that he would have a message of inspiration, faith based, and he did. He really, I thought that he did a good job in touching on what it means to be a good Christian, to be a solid Christian, and to actually go out there and to do some sort of ministry. And I felt that again, he put his neck on the line also in the way that he was going to talk about it and to profess, because at the end of the day, he's not shying away from his Christian background, his Catholic background, and what it is that he believes in and what he expects from the country that he's the vice president of.
So my thought was obviously he was not as sort of deep as or as clear on the gospel as let's say Marco Rubio, which I thought,
Right.
and even Pete had said, and
Except, yeah, yeah.
right.
Yes.
But I thought he actually went pretty deep, and in a way he has something to lose because he's probably going to run in 2028, and they can use a lot of this against
Right.
him. So
Yes.
he could say, hey, look at this guy. He's a super conservative, however you want to call it. But I believe a lot of people went like Charlie almost. I feel like prompted that. Like they almost wanted to talk like Charlie, like about his Lord, and in that way. If maybe they're not used to talk that way. So I feel that's what he brought out in people. So that was another thing. Awesome, David.
No, I agree with you. Charlie made it comfortable for people to see that you can truly profess who it is that you are with your Lord and Savior, and not to be ashamed of it.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what you're involved in. Doesn't matter who your friends are, what your profession is. Go out there and profess it.
I was gonna so if I was to kind of draw some lessons from how what I'm walking away from from this, um, definitely not to be ashamed of the gospel, which I guess you could say in some circles I was courageous, but it was more in like Christian circles. But he was courageous anywhere. And that's definitely something like don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to post whatever you want on Facebook because I don't know who's going to see it and say what. He was not ashamed of that. And I think that gave me, reminded me to have courage and not worry what people think. And especially of the, you can talk about God. A lot of people talk about God, but he spoke about Jesus Christ and the only way to salvation. That makes a difference in my mind than somebody just talking about God in general. A lot of people talk about God, but he spoke
Yes.
about Jesus and what he did for him and the only way to the heaven. And so I'd say it brought in a lot more boldness. It taught me to probably study more in depth, to value my family more, many other things, honestly. Even the way he spoke and style and the way he ran his team and the way he related to people. What are your sort of takeaways?
No, I agree with you on all of those, and I'm left with the idea. I love one of the many mottos or quotes that he had, which was, "Go out there and make heaven crowded," meaning that on a daily basis, tell everybody about Christ. Whichever it may just be that you're not necessarily using your actual words; it's your actions. It's showing that what it means to be a good Christian out there, and there's never uh, too many people that are heading to heaven. And that was just always the way that he lived, and that's what he was trying to make sure that other people around him lived the same way. To me, that was what I was left with from the whole event, and just knowing what I know about Charlie.
Yeah, and David, to kind of strengthen this point about his boldness as well. I remember I was scrolling through Instagram, and I follow a lot of different influencers, and there's this guy that I follow sort of in the real estate realm. And he said, I have a very important announcement to make. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. He's is he coming out or something? Or who knows? I was thinking, because on Instagram that you say, hey, I want you to know that I'm a Christian, and I didn't maybe mention it on my channel, but from now on, I want you to know that I'm going to mention it. I may lose a bunch of followers. That's okay. I don't mind it. And some of you have already left because I mentioned Charlie, and Charlie inspired me to speak about my faith, and he has a big following. And when I saw that video, it kind of shocked me. And I think there's many videos like that, but he was like, he was very bold, whatever the cost is. So I think like him, there's probably many other people that had that impact. Let me ask you, from a charity cup standpoint, um, honestly, it almost like it almost like make me wish to go back to that village that you guys were leading back in the day, with John, where we were talking to many people, and I realized, man, praise God. So in a way, I felt proud in that moment because we were kind of contributing to, like, we were being a Charlie, I guess you could say, in our center of
Sure.
influence, and it almost like said, hey, we need to do that again. With even more boldness because it that had a huge impact, man. And I remember, you guys were organizing it, and at the stadium, there's so many people that we got to talk to. And I think if I was to go back now in that moment, I think I would have way more boldness after the sort of hearing Charlie's story. Not that I maybe didn't then, but I think now even more. So, what are your takeaways from from that?
So I think that it has definitely brought a clear light to me to say that what we were doing then was super important. Back in Moldova, and we there's different ways that has continued. The impact, we will never know. Maybe we'll know in heaven what the impact was on talking to all those people, because sometimes, especially the Moldavian people, they were a little bit more reserved or a little bit cold, and they were not as expressive, so you wouldn't necessarily know what was going through their minds and how many people were impacted or saved, and what God did there. The fact is that Charity Cup has had this type of a goal its entire ministry, about going out there and being bold and putting ourselves out on the line in the different regions that we were in and in the different ministries that we were involved in. And it really gave me encouragement that we can continue to do that and continue to grow that, and possibly implement the type of things that Turning Point has done by going to the universities and so forth, to be able to do that, starting that type of a Charity Cup ministry in the regions that we already are for the universities and the high school, college aged students in those languages, in those regions.
Awesome, David. And I honestly, some of that came to mind. I'm like, man, how can we replicate a little bit or copy? I don't care. It's a compliment.
Yeah, sure.
But that's a very awesome point. And I think we have that ability and connections to do that. And maybe, call it a chapter or whatever in these universities, wherever in Tanzania, Honduras, Moldova, Romania.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, let's do that. You're a man of action and ideas and implementing stuff. So I would love to join you on that, and we should definitely talk about that, because that is an amazing example, and especially there's a need for that in Romania and Moldova and many other places. But obviously, that's the ones that we're very familiar with. That I could totally see it happening.
I agree.
So I totally understand that. That is an awesome takeaway. Let me ask you, sort of as we wrap this up, what do you think if we were to have Charlie on the show? What do you think he would have said regarding, hey, what do you think it means to make your life count? Like, what do you think? What do you think he would have said?
That's a great question. He would have had a lot to say about it, without a doubt. He was a man of a lot of words. But summarizing it, I really think he would have said, go out there, be bold, speak the truth, know the information that you're talking about, and stand up for what it is that you know, and never back down from the people that may be trying to shout you down. And also continue to be the example, even when you think it doesn't matter, because you just don't know who you're going to impact and how it's going to impact them and what changes God will bring in those people's lives. He would definitely be encouraging every single one of us, whether you're in some sort of a ministry or you're just a person with a job, to be able to go out there and be bold, be brave, and to profess the gospel.
Yeah, totally. And as within Charity Cup, I think we want to encourage people to live this way by making your life count. It doesn't have to be just if you're a pastor or a missionary. We try to make everybody live that out, whether you're a soccer player, whether you're a medical person that has come with us on a mission trip, and then we encourage them. So if you were to ask me what Charlie would say, I remember one of his quotes that he said, that sort of I guess in one of the videos, he said, hey, I'd want this organization to live beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like what he would say is that whatever you guys have done as Charity Cup, and let's say if he was to talk to us, is going to go beyond you guys, because the people, the lives that were changed, yeah, they may die, but their souls will live forever. And you brought hopefully thousands, maybe tens of thousands, into salvation, into heaven, and you may not even see the results sometimes, but it's worth it. It's worth all the crazy miles, the sleepless nights, the money spent. It's worth it. Yeah, at the end of the day, and that was another sentiment that I had. All these miles that he traveled, is it worth it? And I believe I think what I realize is, I think it is worth it. This fight that we're putting for people's souls, essentially. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, because I've heard people kind of mention this. Well, some people are now like worshiping Charlie, and I don't I don't believe that's what people are doing. But there's some critics out there. We don't want to worship people. No, I don't think so. I think the way I look at it is Charlie was just a great example, like Apostle Paul. I'm not going to put it at the same level, but he lived out his life like I would want to live. So I want to emulate him. So it's not about worshiping him or anything like that. I just feel like I want to live that way, and he's an amazing example. God knew his personal life at the end of it, but his fruits are definitely there, and I think to me that's the sign of a great Christian is the fruits that he brought. So,
Amen.
so I thank God for that. So, David, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with our audience your experience. Um, let me ask you, as you guys were driving back, what was the sentiment from everybody that was with you? I don't know how many people went with you.
There were three of us in the car. It was a non-stop discussion of what we experienced and how it is impacting us already. I would say that the additional inspiration was what was around us. As we were traveling back from Phoenix to Southern California, there were car after car after car that had Charlie signs in it, or with some sort of chalk or some sort of a marker. I am Charlie written all over it, or inspirational things, showing that the word freedom, for instance, was written on multiple vehicles. So just to see the amount of cars, the amount of people that were driving together with us, people that we didn't know, but that they all had the same sentiment. It was truly a great thing.
And this is in California.
Yes,
For those of you
yes.
that don't know, California is, it's not a place that you'll find conservatives easily. But that's amazing to know as you're driving. So I'm assuming the whole car was very impacted. I
Very
am,
much.
man. I'm jealous you guys went and I didn't get to go. I'm in a good way, David. In a good way. I wish I would have made it because I think you'll never forget that experience, and that's amazing. So. Very good. Thank you so much once again for kind of giving us a preview into that arena, and sort of what happened there from a personal level and standpoint. So, David, as we wrap this up, I do want to remind the audience that we want to have another discussion at a later date when you're available. We'll discuss that, and I'd love to hear more, like I said, about the ministry that you're involved in and how you're making your life count because you are. So we'll do that at that time. For the rest of the audience, I want to thank you for being with us here and listening to another episode of Make Your Life Count. I hope you got something out of it. I know there's probably a lot of different discussions out there about Charlie at this time, but we wanted to kind of bring our testimony as to how it relates to our ministry and how we experience Charlie, and hopefully you got a glimpse about the man. If you had no idea who he was before, maybe in other countries that are listening to this, hopefully you'll know that he's a servant of God that meant a lot to many people. Thank you so much for being with us. Make your life count, and God bless. See you next time.